Hello fourth level students for both studies morning and evening. Part of chapter 1 in George Orwell's Animal Farm is Old Major's speech, which is a description of animal life as miserable, laborious and short. In his speech, Old Major uses several rhetorical techniques such as the use of listing, tricolons, the use of repetition, rhetorical questions, question and answer structure, and direct address. So in his speech, it is considered the most important part of the chapter, and Orwell here displays his great understanding of political rhetoric and how it can be used to move crowds in whichever direction the speaker wishes. First and repeatedly, Old Major addresses the other animals as comrades, and this is a direct reference to friendship and equality. And through his addressing for the audience as comrades, he prefaces the statement that he will not longer will be with the others when he said many months longer. So he, in this particular moment, ingratiates himself to his listeners as not someone who is really intellectual and above them, but as an animal who is 12 years of age, views other animals as equals, not a misguided rabble that needs advice and correction from superior intellect. But here he intensifies the idea of equality. And this idea particularly was to become a concluding remark when he said all animals are equal, which becomes one of the tenets of animalism, that the philosophy upon which the rebellion was supposed to be based. And he, of course, from the very beginning intensifies the idea of animalism. In the second paragraph of his political speech, we find that the first rhetorical style, which is evident for us, the use of the tricolon, the listing, which is a series of three examples, one after another. And this style is used, in fact, to attract the other's attentions from the beginning, when he provides evidence about the types of suffering they are experiencing now. When he said, we are born, then comma, we are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, comma, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the last atom of our strength. So we find here we have what? We have three structures within one major structure. And the very instant that our usefulness has come to an end, we are slaughtered with hideous cruelty. So that is the idea of the concluding notion at the end of the long sentence at the beginning of paragraph 2. Another aspect of repetition starts right away when Old Major pronounces, no animal in England knows the meaning of happiness, no animal in England is free. And this is what a direct intensification of how animals are prevented from their rights. This paragraph closes with a concluding sentence, which is, the life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is the plain truth. This is also a direct revelation about the suffering of animals. Then his argument becomes more forceful when he presents a series of rhetorical questions. After that, the answer for these rhetorical questions. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades, 1,000 times no. So this style, in fact, becomes so forceful, so emotive, to those who are listening now, and just because of to stir, to arouse their emotions, and to get attention to how human beings exploit them. This rhetorical style is followed directly by the use of a tricolon, the list of three instances inside the one basic structure, to provide examples to support what he has already said at the beginning of this paragraph. The soil of England is fertile, its climate is good, it's capable of affording food in abundance and to an enormously greater number of animals than now inhabit it. After that, a question-answer technique is followed. Why then do we continue in this miserable condition? The answer is because nearly the whole of the produce of our labor is stolen from us by human beings. So this structure helps listeners to identify how they are being from time to time exploited. Then in the third paragraph, the old major is very clever to produce the topic sentence around which all the other sentences elaborate the idea presented at the beginning, when he announces man is the only creature that consumes without producing. All the other sentences support this idea. When he said he doesn't give milk, he doesn't lay eggs, he's too weak to pull the plow, he cannot run fast enough to catch rabbits. These are examples that support the topic sentence in which the controlling idea that human beings are exploiting other animals and they are passive, they are not active, they depend on, they live on what the other animals produce for them, just like eggs, milk, or the actions or activities in the farming. So old major here is trying to catch the attention and emotions of those animals, just like the cows, the hens, and the rabbits, and the sheep and goats, and other productive animals. Then the topic sentence is supported by two repeated insights introduced by the repeated word yet in the middle of the paragraph and yet at the end of page 2, when old major said yet he is lord of all the animals, and then he repeated the idea when he said yet there is no one of us that owns more than his bare skin. If we look closely to these two structures, we find that what precedes these two structures, if it is positive, so the insight is presented as being negative. For example, when he said that he doesn't give milk, he doesn't lay eggs, and he's too weak, etc., and he cannot run fast enough to catch rabbits, he said that yet he is lord of all the animals. This is positive. What happens before that, what presented before that, is negative. After that, he said that he sets them to work, he gives back to them the bare minimum that will prevent them from starving, and the rest he keeps for himself. Our labor tills the soil, our dung fertilizes it, and yet all these expressions are what are positive. So the insight here is presented as should be negative. So yet there is no one of us that owns more than his bare skin. So that is the rhetorical style in this particular insight. When we use yet, it means that I am presenting something the opposite of what I have already talked about. And in between, we find once again the old major repeats examples and gives lists of many examples how human beings exploit those animals. When he said he sets them to work, he gives back to them the bare minimum that will prevent them from starving, and the rest he keeps for himself. These are supportive examples of what was already mentioned in the preceding paragraphs. So this style of repetition about human behavior towards animals is for the purpose of making animals remember what old major was talking about, because you see we have clever animals and simple animals, so he gives them direct, simple and repeated ideas from paragraph to paragraph. Then after that, old major changes into a direct address to all those animals who are present to practice some sort of control, emotional control over them. Just like when he said, you cows that I see before me, how many thousands of gallons of milk have you given during this last year? Then after that, he moves to you hens, how many eggs have you laid in this last year? And how many of those eggs ever hatched into chickens? Then he moves to the horses when he said, "And you, Clover, where are those 4 foals you bore? Who should have been the support and the pleasure of your old age?" Then he said, "You'll never see one of them again." So this emotive language is used to urge animals towards the idea of revolution. This direct address and emotive touches continues to the next chapter when he now addresses the other animals. "You young porkers who are sitting in front of me, every one of you will scream your lives out at the block within a year. To that horror you all must come, cows, pigs, hens, sheep, and everyone." So he includes all the other animals as an example of the exploitation of human beings. To that horror you all must come. Come, it means to your end. And even the horses and the dogs have no better fate. So he excludes nothing. You boxer, as if he believes the most powerful on the farm, the very day that those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will sell you to the knocker. And in fact we are going to see that, but instead of Jones, it is Napoleon who is going to send him to the slaughterhouse, who will cut your throat and boil you down for the foxhounds. Then finally he addresses the dogs when he said, "As for the dogs, when they grow old and toothless, Jones tries a brick round their necks and drowns them in the nearest pond." So after this long introduction in the Major's speech, the second part is primarily concerned with giving the direct lines of how to make a revolution. So we have a series of rhetorical questions. All of them are directed towards the tyranny of human beings. He starts just like this way. "Is it not crystal clear then, comrades, that all the evils of this life of ours spring from the tyranny of human beings? What then must we do? Why work night and day, body and soul, for the overthrow of the human race?" So these are the sequential rhetorical questions, and the answers can be found in the second line. "Only get rid of man, and the produce of our labor would be our own. Almost overnight we could become rich and free." So "we could become rich and free" is a materialistic thinking about how human beings can be easily tempted. Then in the middle of the second part of his speech he concludes all the matter with the idea of rebellion. "This is my message to you, comrades, rebellion." And the ultimate aim of his speech can be clearly exposed through his sequential use of imperative form, just like "fix your eyes on and above all pass on this message, then shall carry on the struggle," as if these are the guidelines for the rebellion to happen next time. And this sudden change in the tone of his speech continues in the next paragraph through also the use of a sequence of imperative forms of the verb, just like "remember, now remember, comrades," and then he said "never listen," and then closing the paragraph with "let there be perfect unity, perfect comradeship in the struggle. All men are enemies, all animals are comrades." This is a stirring assertion of a type of conclusion that, just like simple slogans are used at the end of this paragraph to show how animals can remember these slogans so easily. That's why he said these slogans in simple structures. All men are enemies, all animals are comrades. Before the last paragraph in his speech, now Old Major changes into another topic, which is the idea of identification. Who is the enemy, who is the friend? The repetition of whatever in two sequential sentences is a matter of assertion and to give generalization. Whatever goes up on two legs is an enemy, and whatever goes up on four legs or has wings is a friend. So the use of whatever is a reference to generalized reference. Then the rest of the paragraph is devoted to remind the animals about certain things to not to do, just like the idea of the assertion through the use of no. No animal must ever live in a house or sleep in a bed or wear clothes or drink alcohol or smoke tobacco or touch money or engage in trade. Then the last sentence also introduces another prevention, also introduced by the word no. No animal must ever kill any other animal. If you compare the two sentences started with no, we find after this expression a moment of generalization presented with the word all. So the sentence which read no animal must ever live in a house up to the end of the sentence followed by all the habits of man are evil. Then also after the sentence no animal must ever kill any other animal, also we find there is a generalized opinion all animals are equal.